When it comes to winter fishing, one of the most important things to consider is the venue that you're going to fish during the cold months. There's no point in targeting a large, low stock, tricky venue through the winter period. The type of venue where you're going to struggle to catch in spring and summer and autumn, it's not the kind of venue you want to pick for the winter when everything's against you, the fish aren't really feeding a great deal and it's freezing cold. All that's going to do is really hit your morale, make you fall out of love with fishing, and mean that when spring comes back round you're going to have no motivation for really hitting the tricky venues again. So I'd say you want to be looking for a venue that's a bit smaller than average. 2-3 acres is perfect, and high stock. It's not about catching big fish this time of year, it's just about catching fish and having fun. So doubles and the odd 20s perfect for the winter. And try and find a venue that's pretty close to your home. During the winter, obviously you've got ice and snow and bad driving conditions, so you don't want to be having to travel a long way for your fishing. So look in your local area and try and pick a venue that's reasonably close, somewhere that you can do short sessions on. For my own fishing this winter, I've stumbled across a lake not too far from my home called East Elf Lakes. It's a day ticket and it sort of fits the bill perfectly for the winter. Three lakes on the site, all small venues. The biggest is only a couple of acres. All of them are really well stocked with young, fast-growing, hungry singles, doubles, and quite a few 20s. For my research has sort of led me to believe it's got good form for doing fish in the winter, and it looks perfect for the odd overnight or just day session fishing this winter, just to get a few bites and keep enjoying being out on the bank. My second tip for the week for catching fish in winter is to use maggots as your free feed. I'm not overly keen on using maggots as the hook bait because you've got too many nuisance species, generally eels, roach and whatnot, bream, and you're just too paranoid if you're leaving a rod out all day or all night that your hook bait's not being pecked away by the nuisance species. So for that reason I don't tend to use the maggots as the hook bait. However, there's no doubt that they are probably the best feed bait you can use in the winter. They're really attractive to the carp, and one of the key elements is that they're very digestible as well. I think a maggot's something like 90% water, and when the fish eats it, it's very quickly digested and then pooed out the other end, meaning that they're not full up and they can just keep feeding and feeding, which is key in getting the feeding situation created in your swim, giving you a better chance of hooking the fish during the winter months. My preferred colour of maggots is red and white. Usually go 50-50 with the red and white. Always done really well feeding these, and what you can do if you catch a fish is just monitor its poo on the mat. If you find that they're just excreting just red, it's a good sign that they're perhaps just eating the red maggots. Then you can focus on using just the red in the free feed in your PVA bags, maybe using red hook baits. Vice versa, if it's just the white, then use white hook baits and just concentrate on the white maggot. And if it's 50-50, you know that the fish are really having it and the colour's not really important and they're just on the feed, and then you can keep a nice even mix. In terms of quantity, it really depends on the venue you're fishing and the number of fish you're catching. Don't think at this time of year you really need to fill it in. I'd probably start with half a dozen or so large impact spodfuls over an area, and then I'd fish a PVA bag over the top with a mixture of some fine pellet crumb and also some maggots as well, and just play it by ear really. If you're starting to catch fish and there's signs of feeding activity, increase the amount of feed that you're using, but no need to go filling it in. Maggots, they don't crawl away, certainly this time of year. Once they're in the water, it's freezing cold, they tend to just become very dormant very quickly on the bottom, and they'll just sit there on top of the silt. They're not burying themselves into the silt and hiding. We know this from the underwater footage and diving that Rob Hughes has done during the winter with maggots, so you don't need to fill it in to create a nice a bed of maggots. Like I say, half a dozen or so spods full, plenty enough to get yourself a bite, and then just top up little and often. choice. To be honest with you, mine doesn't really vary that much from spring, summer, autumn or winter. I'm a big fan of bright hook baits, I always have been, and I think they come really into their own at this time of year when the fish are a lot more sluggish, not feeding so much, and you're looking to nick a bite rather than create a feeding situation where you're going to be catching loads of fish. My two favourite colours, my number one is white. It's a fantastic fish catcher, and like I say, it works for me all year round. And then my second favourite is orange. Orange perhaps isn't one of the most commonly used colours. You tend to see people using white, pink and yellow probably, but I'm a big fan of the orange. It's done well for me in the past and I'll continue to use it. In terms of the flavours, I tend to roll my own hook baits, just a personal thing. Allows me to use my own little secret flavour combinations and mixtures. One common theme is fruitiness. I like a sort of nice tangy, fizzy fruit kind of flavour, and it seems to work well for me all year round. The beauty of using pop-ups for hook baits in the winter months is that you can load them full of flavour, so that they're literally oozing a liquid attraction into the water, and I think that just gives you that little bit of extra help if the fish are sluggish and they're not really in the mood for feeding. They're slowly moving along. You've got the bright visual colour that stands out in the water, and then that flavour just leaking out into the water, and hopefully there's enough there just to switch that fish to having a little feed, and then your rig comes into its own and nails them. So yeah, bright hook baits loaded up with liquid attraction, brilliant for fishing inside a little solid PVA bag, over the bed of a spotted area of maggots, or just a cast out single hook bait. If you see a fish show a little bit of fizz in, just a single hook bait on its own on a little hinge rig or whatever, perfect for this time of year. When it comes to rig presentation during the winter months, concealment is of far more importance than any other time of year. The water will be at its clearest during the winter months as there's less fish activity stirring up the bottom, algae's died, the weeds died, and there will just be a lot of gin clear water on many lakes, and this means that your presentation is going to stand out far more than it would do at other times of the year. So the first thing that I always implement is fluorocarbon mainline. This is £19 Illusion Trans Khaki. It's practically invisible on the lake bed. We know this from the underwater filming that Rob's done with it. It's nearly impossible to actually film because it's so invisible. It sinks like a brick, and it's also very supple. So once you've cast out, you can slacken the line off. The fluorocarbon's pinned along the lake bed in the 6 foot or so near the rig, out the way of the fish. They can't see it, they can't come into contact with it, and it's perfect for this gin clear winter fishing. Moving on to that, I like to use a solid PVA bag for a lot of the fishing in the winter. The reason for that is because the whole rig goes inside the PVA bag with some micro pellet and some maggots, and when that PVA bag melts, the lead and the hook link and the hook are all concealed within the free feed, and you've just got the little bright pop-up that sinks under the weight of the hook just at the top of that pile of attraction. Fish comes along, there's no line or leader to spook them, there's just a little patch of food that they can see. They dip down, one mouthful, the rig flies into their mouth. It's only a short hook link and a very big hook, and they're nailed. This is a size 4 SSC hook, which is a big hook, and usually you'd probably watch tips about winter fishing saying scale down, use a smaller hook. Well, the beauty of the solid bag, like I say, this is hidden in the pellet, it's hidden below the hook bait, so you can get away with a much bigger hook. And what that gives you the advantage of is it's much harder for the fish to eject. The bigger the piece of metal that's in their mouth, the harder it is for them to spit it out without getting hooked. And in winter, when they're moving a lot more sluggishly, I believe that big hook just increases the chance of hooking the fish when it sucks the bait in, and those small percentages can make a big difference during the winter months. The hook link is just a short length of reflex camo. Again, it's hidden under the pellet and the maggot, so it's not really that important whether it's invisible or not because it's concealed under the bait. And I've just got a 3.5 ounce inline lead, and it's fish drop-off style with my main line going around the outside of the lead and a quick change drop-off swivel and a plug in the front. I like to use the heavy lead. Again, like I say, the fish aren't moving big distances, they're not very active, so the bigger lead, I believe, gives me the opportunity to sink that size 4 hook into the bottom lip and make purchase a lot easier because there's more resistance. The downside of the big lead and the short hook link, when you're playing the fish, you've got that real heavy lead swinging around right close to the hook hole. The last thing you want to do is bump the hook. You might get one bite in a 48-hour session in the winter. You don't want to lose it. So by ejecting the lead, you've not got that heavy weight swinging around. I know it's a price to pay to lose a lead, but I'd much rather lose a £1 lead and land a 20, 30 or 40 pound winter carp than hook a fish, keep the lead but lose the fish because the lead bumped the hook out. So that's the presentation. It's really simple, there's nothing fancy, just good solid reliable components, and it's all geared around creating a safe zone that the fish feel happy to feed in. And once they take in that mouthful of bait, the lead, the hook, the rig do their job, and hopefully you're holding a nice big winter carp for the cameras. At this time of year, location is at its utmost importance. Of course, in the warmer months as well, getting on the fish is key to catching them. However, when it's warm, the fish are a lot more active, so they cover a lot more ground and they can move from different parts of the lake during the day and night. They also tend to be more spread out and in smaller shoals, and it makes it a lot easier for you to find them and then ultimately catch them. Come the winter, the fish are a lot more lethargic. They don't tend to cover a lot of ground, they tend to shoal up much tighter, and it becomes a lot harder to actually fish a piece of water where you've got fish in front of you. If you just turn up and pick a swim that's closest to the car, or one that you liked in the summer because it was your favourite swim, there's no guarantee you're going to have fish on you, and you could end up blanking before you've even started. But by using your eyes and your ears, walking around the venue, looking for signs of fish, you can really give yourself a better chance of catching in the winter. Get yourself a nice decent pair of polarised sunglasses. These take the glare off the surface of the water and enable you a lot easier to see fizzing, fish cruising just below the surface, coloured water where they might be feeding and stirring the bottom. And it really can help you find the fish, put a couple of rigs on them and catch a fish very quickly. Because in the winter, when you do tend to find the fish, like I say, they are together and you can catch quite a few fish quite quickly if you can put a bait on them. Your ears are also a massive advantage to you at this time of year, because you can listen for sounds of fish crashing, but also listen for the sound and reaction of nature responding to fish crashing and moving close to them. Coots are a classic giveaway to carp. Carp must hate coots in the winter, because if a carp shows, a coot absolutely gets petrified, it squawks really loud and it gives away the carp's location. I've lost count of the number of times I've been sat there listening away at watching the water. Next thing I hear an almighty disturbance from a coot, run round to where the coot is, eyes fixed on the area, and within 5 or 10 minutes a bit of fizzing's come up or a fish has shown and the coot's given the game away for poor old Mr. Carp. You've then got to have the energy and the motivation to pack everything up and move to that area. There's no good sitting there thinking they'll turn up, they'll come. In winter it's just not like that. You've got to go to them. So pack up, be ready to move quickly, move on to the fish, get your rigs out as quietly and as quickly as possible. Just a couple of PVA bags or single bright hook baits, get a couple of bites, and if the fish are there and you found them, then you can look at adding a bit of free food. If you stay in there for a night or two, put a few maggots in and try and build the swim up as the session goes. So location in winter, absolutely essential.
If you'd like to watch more videos from Fox Fishing TV, then click the link here. Or if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, then click the link here.